Okay, so this morning I was watching CBS This Morning with Charlie Rose and Gayle King, which I think is my favorite TV news show. Anyway, because Trump is in Asia, they came out of Korea and everything was about Korea or Japan and stuff like that. And now he's on his way to China. So they did this piece from Dandong, which is on the Chinese-Korean border. It's a predictable piece, but what it made me really interesting and made me think about a much more seminal question, not about what is Trump doing in Asia, but rather how come CBS News and every network doesn't just use iPhones? I mean, they're so good, it's unbelievable, and of course they don't cost anything. Anyway, the story was done out of Dandong, and the correspondent, where they went to shoot all these goods being transferred from China to North Korea over the bridge at Dandong, and apparently that's where all the stuff takes place. And in the very beginning of the piece, they got shut down. They're on camera, and the Chinese police come along and they say, you have to stop filming, this is illegal. And of course, if you send a correspondent all the way to Korea, he can't come back and say, well, I didn't get anything because the police shut me down, because he'd be fired. So instead, you're going to like this story a lot. So the correspondent turns to the camera and he says, because the police shut us down, we had to shoot this entire story on an iPhone. And then I looked at the rest of the story. It was great. I mean, the visuals were fantastic. You couldn't tell that it hadn't been shot on an iPhone, and maybe the cameraman shot it and he knew what he was doing, but for crying out loud, the quality was as good as they'd shot with their giant camera they schlepped all over the place. And then, of course, it made me wonder, how come CBS doesn't do all their stories on iPhones? It would make a lot of sense. When I was at the network, the biggest problem we had wasn't finding stories. The biggest problem we had was finding the crew, because you only had a limited number of crew to shoot an infinite number of stories. So you're always very constricted. And then even if you got to the story, you had to wait for the crew to show up. And lots of times they had a commitment to go someplace else. It was crazy. Not to mention having 3 or 4 or even 5 people. When I was at PBS, we were signatories to the Directors Guild. So you had a director. 4 or 5 people show up to essentially do one person's job, which is to shoot and tell a story. So when I looked at this thing, I thought, geez, why doesn't CBS just ditch all the big cameras and the camera people, nothing personal to those of you in the business, and simply have all the reporters or have the cameramen report? There must be 500 employees or 1,000 employees at CBS News who could go out every day with their little iPhones and go and shoot stories for CBS News. Let me tell you something. You can't tell the difference. And all right, maybe you're a technician and you can sit there and go, oh no, there's compressions in the blacks. No viewer cares. I'm in the business. I watched the thing this morning. I couldn't tell. Why should anybody else be able to tell? They can't. So in point of fact, you could take an organization like CBS News or a local TV news station, which only has 3 or 4 camera crews to start with. And Jeffrey Roth doing a fantastic job out there, giving all his people iPhones to shoot on. We'll be talking about that. But the point is that the iPhone, not only does it shoot, it edits, it adds music, it adds graphics, it lets you go live like I'm doing now. It's an incredibly powerful piece of gear. So why in the world would you hamstring your whole news operation and say, no, you have to wait for the cameraman to get here. The cameraman isn't set. We don't have the lights set up. Whatever kind of crap comes along. Every single person at CBS News, I'm willing to bet, has an iPhone or maybe a Galaxy, which does exactly the same thing. They carry it with them all the time. It shoots 4K. All you got to do to get the thing going is point and push the record button, and you're finished, and you can make television journalism all day long. One of the greatest problems in the business is the complexity of making television and the cost of making television journalism. When you're flying 5 people to Korea and you're putting them up in hotels and you're giving them meals and you're rent-a-cars and translators, it costs a fortune. But if you just got one guy who's going and say, okay, get on the plane, go see what you can find, it allows you a lot cheaper and allows you a lot more flexibility. So instead of sending the cameraman, the producer, all this kind of crap, send 5 people with 5 iPhones and see what you can get. Also, you get much more intimacy, you get more in people's faces. They don't notice. There's a million reasons why they do it. And I don't understand why they don't do it, because watching the thing on CBS this morning, this seems to me the way to go. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. And tomorrow I'm going to go out and shoot some stuff. I only shoot I'm waiting for my 10 to arrive, but even this 7 is pretty good. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you'll join us on thevj.com, where you can read much more about this and learn how to do it. Talk to you later.